Fantasy Life may have only released less than a week ago, but it's already become not only one of my favourite games of 2025, but it's also quickly becoming one of my personal favourites, and I genuinely can't stop playing it. And today I'm going to tell you exactly why I've been absolutely loving it, and a few little things you might want to bear in mind before you buy it at the end. Now, it's safe to say, although I desperately wanted Fantasy Life to be great, it almost seemed too good to be true, as it had literally everything I've been searching for: a live sim with an RPG-like story. And despite the original Fantasy Life coming out over 10 years ago, this is a genre that seems to rarely exist even now. As in this, it will allow you to fish, farm, mine, craft, and even decorate, but all with an overarching purpose and story. But not only did Fantasy Life I meet my expectations, it absolutely shattered them. As despite the fact that it takes so many elements from so many different genres and meshes them all together as one, it somehow works fantastically well. And I don't think any trailer could have prepared me for just how massive the scope of this game turned out to be. As despite being over 30 hours into the game so far, I can't see myself stopping anytime soon. And don't worry, this review is going to be completely spoiler-free. Now, Fantasy Life begins with you creating your very own character. And I honestly wasn't expecting there to be quite so many options, as not only are there quite a lot of human features for you to choose from, you also don't even have to be human, which is something so rare to find in fantasy games even now. Now, the game begins with you crash landing on a random island, only to find yourself 1,000 years in the past. And although this island and its people are great, you desperately search for a way to get back to your own time and check on your friends and crewmates. The only issue is, once you do make it back to the present time, the island is completely unrecognizable, because where there once was houses and a city centre is now just ruins. And the story soon becomes all about unraveling the mystery of what happened to this town 1,000 years ago and trying to figure out if you can fix it. Now, in order to do this, you'll find yourself switching between the past and the present as you see fit. And although I was worried that the story may be a little bit stale or predictable, seeing as this is a game made for all ages, those worries were gone in an instant. As firstly, the writing is just absolutely hilarious. I sort of liken it to being a Disney film where, although it is suitable for kids, if you're older, there's definitely some jokes in some of the conversations that only you will get. And the thing is, whenever I thought I knew where the story was going, they really decided to throw in something completely unexpected to get you off the trail. And honestly, these absolutely wacky moments have to be some of my favourite parts of the story. Now, just a word of warning, for some, this is a very story-heavy or text-heavy game, should I say, as there's not really much voice acting. But personally, I've been looking for a game with a fantastic story that I can just jump into, so this was perfect for me. Now, as you progress through the story, you'll find yourself in areas that get increasingly more difficult, with higher level enemies and challenges in your way. So this is when the RPG side of Fantasy Life really kicks in. The game lets you choose between 14 different jobs, or as they call them, lives. And these are split into 3 different categories. You have the combat lives, which are things like being a hunter who uses a bow, a mercenary who uses a sword to fight, and a magician that uses magic. Then you have the gathering lives, which are very similar to farming sim type activities. That includes fishing, mining, woodcutting, and farming. And finally, you have your crafting lives, such as being a blacksmith to make upgraded weapons, an alchemist for making potions to help you on your travels, and a carpenter for making furniture. Now, it is worth mentioning there is no way to avoid combat completely in Fantasy Life. You can do a little bit less of it if you want to, but you will need to fight and battle as part of the main story to progress it. So not only will you have to do some fighting, you'll also have to spend time leveling it up to get past some of these challenges. So you will need to pick a combat class pretty early on in order to have an okay time with the story. One thing I did like is the fact that a lot of the lives relate to one another. So for example, if you want to make yourself better equipment by leveling up the blacksmith life, you'll also wind up leveling up your mining life as well to get the resources. As even though you can go to the shops and buy some of the resources, they're kind of expensive and you kind of want to keep your money for other stuff, so it's best to just get it yourself. Now the best thing about these lives is it really doesn't matter which ones you pick, as no matter where you go, even inside of the caves, there's spots to do just about everything. And one thing I love is that the boss fights aren't even always fights. Sometimes you'll come across a boss tree, a boss rock, so you can really pick whichever lives you want to master and kind of go after different quests and different secrets depending on what's the highest level. Now the leveling up process is actually really satisfying, which is good as you're going to be spending a lot of your time doing that. Now, when we first saw the trailers, although I thought the minigames looked fun, I was a little bit worried that they'll become boring over time. But actually, this was something I ended up really enjoying. Each type of life has its own minigame associated to it. So the gathering lives involve you going around an object till you find its sweet spot to inflict the maximum damage. The crafting lives have a sometimes stressful minigame where you need to click on the right crafting station as fast as possible. And then you have the combat, which I don't think was too difficult overall in the game, especially if you were the right level going into it. I personally went with the magician because they can just hang back and shoot from afar, so I didn't really have to worry too much about getting hit. I could also heal myself, which was really useful. Now, as you level up each of your different lives, you'll also be given points which you can spend in a skill tree to make you even stronger and even unlock abilities that makes your life easier. Now, each of the lives also have set quests for you to complete and level them up, allowing you to unlock even more of the skill tree. And even though leveling up is somewhat necessary for the story itself, I'd often get so carried away learning about each of the lives that I'd forget about the story entirely. And this was made even better by how easy it was to change life. As not only will the game automatically switch the life for you in whatever situation you need one, which was exceptionally useful when you're in an area with resources but also enemies. So for example, if you finish fighting and then you walk up to a rock, it will automatically switch you from a fighting class to a miner without you needing to do anything. You can also just press a button on the D-pad to quickly switch into any class you want, making the live system feel really easy to get into, even as a new player to the franchise like myself. Now, not only do you have main quests for you to do, there's also side quests. And these are easy to spot as the characters will have little speech bubbles above their head in whichever town you're in. Now, a lot of these quests will either be asking you to go fight something, gather items, or craft them something. And the game makes it super easy for you to complete side quests. You see, gathering is made really easy by the fact that you don't have a bag size limit. You can just wander around and collect as many items as you want as you go. There's also fast travel that makes it really easy to get around if you do need to go and collect a specific item. And then you have the crafting menu itself, which will tell you exactly what items you need to craft for a specific quest. And then to top things off, you can look on the map and see just from there if there's any quests you can easily complete with whatever you have in your bag. And I love how easy it is to do these side quests, as these are a fantastic way of making money. Now, once I got around 5 hours into the game, I thought I more or less understood the gameplay loop. You do a few story quests till you find yourself in an area that you're under leveled for, where you then go off, level up, and come back ready to tackle the story. But it was really only at this point where the game truly started to open up, and added a few major aspects that made this game bigger than I could ever imagine. Firstly, you have the decorating. As it turns out, not only are you tasked with saving the town in the past, you're also in charge of rebuilding it in the present. And this borrows a lot of mechanics from Animal Crossing, but I'm not mad at it, as this will allow you to place buildings down, pathing, terraform, and even decorate the inside of your house with any furniture that you build. You're also able to upgrade your house for quite a lot of money to make it bigger and better. The part I really liked about the decorating though is that it had a purpose. You see, as you journey both inside and outside of the story, you may come across what the game calls Strangelings. And these are people who have been turned into inanimate objects. And in order to turn them back into humans, you will need to offer these things called celestial gifts, which are essentially blue flowers to the goddess statues. And the way you get these is by decorating. And the prettier your island is, the more that spawn each in real life day. Now, it is worth pointing out the game itself doesn't run on in real life time. Not only does the game have its own day-night cycle, but you're also free to go to sleep whenever you want to change the time. And there's really only two aspects that run on in real life time. That is when the flowers spawn, which is once per day, and then also the daily quests, which are basically just little things for you to do each and every day that give you more blue flowers as you complete them. Now, Strangelings are actually incredibly important to your island, but also to progressing the story. As once you turn them into humans, they can become buddies, and you can bring up to 3 of them with you at once. And when you go about completing your side quests or just exploring the island, they'll level up alongside of you, and in turn become even more useful. Now, your buddies come in 3 different types, much like the types of lives that you have. Some of them will be able to help you in combat by either fighting alongside of you or by healing you. Other buddies will be able to help you gather resources, and the crafting-like buddies will also help you craft. And if you're someone who's struggling with the crafting mechanic, I definitely recommend leveling up the appropriate buddy. Now, you might already be thinking, wow, this game seems pretty jam-packed filled with stuff to do already. But the thing is, I haven't spoken about one of the largest parts, or at least largest map-wise parts of the game. And that's Jinmoisia. I may have pronounced that wrong, but we're just gonna go on my own headcanon now. Now, this is essentially my go-to place for leveling up all of my skills, as this is an open space of land free for you to explore. And not only does it have different areas that you can go to level up your skills, but there's also these shrines, which they call shiny poops. I think they did this to remind you that you're playing Fantasy Life and not Tears of the Kingdom. And inside these shrines, you'll find more strangelings to take back to your base. But in order to get them, you'll need to complete some sort of challenge. And to my surprise, these challenges aren't just combat focused. Some of them are skill related, like cutting down all the trees within a time limit, and others are puzzle based, which was a welcome surprise. Now, other than exploring and finding plenty of secrets hidden all around the place in each of the maps, there is one final big game mechanic that we need to discuss, and that is dungeons. Now, this is probably my least touched part of the game so far, as I think it's best done with friends, which we're going to get into in a second. But this is essentially a randomly generated dungeon for you to take on and get rare loot. And the idea is each floor has a challenge for you to complete, and it gets progressively harder as you get further along in the dungeon. And these challenges are not just combat related, they can also be fishing, mining, or wood cutting is what I've seen so far. Now, I will say by yourself, these are pretty challenging. And I had to be over 20 hours into the game before I even managed to start clearing the first floor on my own. So in reality, I think this is a mode best done in multiplayer, be it with people you know or people you don't. So I think it's time to finally talk about the multiplayer. So Fantasy Life is cross-platform, meaning that you can play with people on any device. And once you unlock multiplayer, you'll be able to decide what you'd like to do with other people. And it will give you the option to either hang out in your own town if you want to show it off. You can also go to Jinmoisia together, where you can actually share XP, and this is a great way to level up fast. As for example, if your friend is level 20 in fishing and you are only level 5, they can go and do fishing for you and help you level up faster. You can also, as I said earlier, take on the dungeons together as well to make those a little bit easier. Now, if you're playing on PC or PlayStation 5, you can also carry out the job quests while you're with someone else. However, if you're on Xbox or Nintendo Switch, this feature and the other updates are not coming till the 29th, so just something to bear in mind. And for some reason, whatever you do in multiplayer is limited to just 1 hour. So after that hour is over, you'll have to make a new lobby where they can join again. I don't fully understand why they put that limit on multiplayer, and whilst I am sad that you can't do the main storyline quests, at least there is plenty to do otherwise. So now we've spoken a little bit about the Switch, let's talk about the performance. As it's likely you've seen a noticeable difference between my PC playthrough and then my Nintendo Switch one, with there not only being a difference with the frame rate, but also the render distance and the graphics quality. Now I will say this is a lot better than I was expecting from the trailers that they gave us so far for the Nintendo Switch. And you'll be glad to know that even in handheld mode, the game still holds up. And it's unfortunate at this point that we sort of celebrate the fact that Switch ports don't have any crashes or any major bugs, which is great to see in fantasy life, but it's sad that we've gotten to the point where that's a great thing. Now, there are a few major downsides for playing this on the Switch right now. Firstly, we have what I said earlier, which is the fact that the Switch is not running the most recent version of the game and won't be until the 29th. The other major downside is the fact that you can't adjust any of the graphics settings on the Switch. So on PC, you're able to adjust not just the brightness, but you can also turn off the motion blurring, which can really help with people who have motion sickness, and also turn off the background blur as well if you want to. On the Nintendo Switch version, however, all you can do is adjust the brightness. There is nothing else that they'll allow you to do. I also noticed that the default settings for brightness were a little bit high on the Switch, I think, so I turned it down and everything looked miles better. On the Nintendo Switch version that the Switch has currently, you also might notice this really weird render line. Now, this is only really noticeable in particular spots that you're playing through. However, as annoying as it is to see, it is going to be patched out on the 29th, so it's just kind of a minor problem for now. Other than that though, I've seen minimal frame drops, and I think the game is looking pretty decent for how wide a scope it is, and the load times aren't awful either. On the Steam Deck, the game runs flawlessly. I was running it on max graphics with no issues. It really seemed more or less exactly like the PC version. And it's also worth noting that on Nintendo Switch and Steam Deck, you don't need an Epic account to play the game. On PC, however, it sort of forced you to either make an Epic account or log in through it to even access the game, which I honestly wasn't expecting, because I thought from the FAQ section that I read that you'd only need an Epic account if you wanted to play cross-save. Speaking of cross-save, however, I had no problem setting this up whatsoever. It was really easy to pick what save you wanted to be uploaded to the cloud as well. It took a little bit of time to access the server, but once it was done, it worked well. Overall, I've been having an absolute blast playing Fantasy Life so far. And although I can't sit here and tell you that in this current climate right now, this is a must-buy game that you need to run out and get, I will say, for me personally, it's been worth every penny I've spent so far. At least for the base game. I think for the deluxe edition, I'm not sure if the items are really worth it. I haven't found myself using many, if any of them at this point in the game, so it's probably worth saving that extra $10. For me, the story has been a blast, and honestly, at times, I had to remind myself to even do the story, as I got so wrapped up doing everything else there is to do in the game. I also love that even though the map is absolutely huge, it's filled with so many secrets and so many things to go explore. And this is not just present in one map, it's present in all of them. And I truly only think the only time you'll find the game grindy is if you're rushing and just trying to do the story alone without taking part in anything else there is to do in the game. But if you continually get distracted exploring the world, taking on side quests from the characters, or even trying to master some of the lives, you'll find that you might end up being over-leveled by the time you remember about the story. Now, with all of my reviews, I do like to add a little section at the end, which is what you guys think. I put a poll up on my YouTube channel, which you can see here, asking people who have bought the game if they think it's worth their money. So far, it seems like the vast majority of people are very glad that they bought it, even for the expensive price tag that it currently is. I think people's main issue is just the way it looks and plays on the Nintendo Switch, but I think this is completely personal and fully dependent on if you have another way to play it. I can genuinely see myself playing so many more hours of this, and I cannot wait to see what it looks like and what it plays like when it comes to the Switch too. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, as I have a tips and tricks video coming very soon. And if you want to see my opinion of the Switch 2 when I got my hands on it, click this video here.